Hi, this is Youning, the co-founder of Endowus. I'll be hosting Loo this evening. Just a quick public service announcement. We have the ability for people to ask questions. We've taken some questions ahead of the talk and we'll be asking some of those this evening. But if you have any questions that come up during the talk as well, please feel free to type it into the question box and I'll try my best to sort of answer or ask Loo the questions tonight as well. Great, we are at 300 people. This is great. So I think it's probably about time to start. Just a quick introduction. My name is Youning. I'm the co-founder of Endowus. Endowus is the first approved CPF digital financial advisor. We offer low-cost, globally diversified investment portfolios via an easy-to-use online platform. If I get a chance later, I'll talk a bit more about us. All my life, I've been an investment and finance person. I personally started out in investment banking, private equity, hedge funds in a large family office in Singapore. And this evening, we're very lucky to have Mr. Loo with us, otherwise known as Mr. 1M65. He's fantastic. He's one of the best speakers I've ever come across. Inspirational. Speaks a bit like my sergeant from BMT, but he actually has an MBA from Stanford and has been honored by the government for what he does. This evening, Loo will share his secret on how we can all have 4M65. And I will say this up front. When most people tell you something like this, be very, very skeptical. Most of the time they're trying to sell you something, probably something you don't need and probably something where they're going to fleece you on the back end. But in my view and in the eyes of many, Loo is honestly doing this out of the goodness of his soul and his strategy actually works. So without further ado, Loo.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a wonderful Friday night. As I said just now, I'm in between dinner and a wonderful rain that's putting some people to sleep. So I'll make this time worthwhile for you. And thanks, Youning, for an incredible introduction. Nobody have ever introduced me this way, that I speak like your BMT sergeant. But I think that well describe it. Yes. So tonight I would share with you on my favorite topic. It's called 4M65. Okay, a little bit introduction of myself. I run a organization, a movement, actually not organization, called 1M65 movement. Okay, and one of the disclaimer I have is that I don't work for the government or CPF. I will talk a lot about the CPF and I'll talk occasionally about the government. Some of things that I say the government don't like to hear. Some of the things I say the CPF don't like to hear. But you know what? They even give me an award for speaking so much about CPF. So I'm really a ordinary Singaporean with a extraordinary financial strategy. I'm not here to sell any products. I've never collected a single cent for all my talks. I don't profit from this. I'm really doing this out of a public good. And this is the 78th time I'm giving a talk on CPF and this financial strategy. Yeah, so as I was saying, I really am an ordinary Singaporean with an extraordinary financial strategy. I've talked for many years on this strategy called 1M65. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide will kind of describe the cornerstone of my 1M65 strategy. So for many years of my life in 1M65, I've actually shared that a couple can actually combine their CPF savings and make $1 million by 65 years old. And it's not quite difficult. Okay, it's not quite difficult. What you need to do is to do what this slide says. Okay, so first of all, for a couple as young as possible, like maybe around 30 years old, try to make sure your CPF special account, Medisave account is top up to 130,000. Now, why 130,000? This is what we did. Okay, me and my wife did. And why 130,000 then was because the CPF minimum sum then was 130,000. Today, the CPF minimum sum is about 181,000. It's also is now known as the full retirement sum. But at that point in time, CPF minimum sum was 130,000. So we filled it up, okay? And if you allow the power of compounding now, CPF special account and Medisave account has a 4 to 6% interest. And if you let the power of compounding run its course, what you have is that when you are 30 years old, you just fill it up to 130,000 for you and fill up 130,000 for your wife. Work very hard, save a lot, fill it up, and let it run. At 65 years old, you have $1 million waiting for you at retirement as a combined family. I share this slide to many people. Okay, many people, and everybody initially were disbelieved, but over time, more and more people start to buy in. We even have a movement right now. It's quite a big movement of people who are passionate about this. But this slide is very interesting. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've been sharing this. I've been invited. I think we jump a bit. Okay, I've been invited by many organizations to talk about 1M65. I've even invited by CPF board management team to talk to them about CPF. So in short, I've been invited by CPF to talk to CPF about CPF. Right, that's quite a remarkable, thing. So today, more and more people are listening about this 1M65. Initially, there are a lot of skeptics. Now there are more believers that you can make $1 million out of your CPF. Next.
So Lou, a question that I think is a natural question when I see all these photos. I mean, what's in it for you? Why do you do this? Why do you do what you do? 78 talks is a lot of talks.
That's a good question. I've been asking myself that. Why am I doing this? So that's a joke, okay? I've been blessed. When I was 30 years old, I met a financial guru. Now he taught me this, and he basically what he's doing it is really out of a good heart. I owe it to him, and the only thing I could repay his goodness is to do what he has done for me. So today I'm sharing with everybody what he has done for me, and really this is really something for public good. I don't profit anything from it, not a single cent. Never collected anything. I'm not even related to Endowus or UBK, okay, for that matter. I've talked a lot publicly about Endowus. I think it's a great company, but I've never received a single cent from all these talks and all these companies. So really, this is really for the good of fellow Singaporeans, and it's my greatest wish and passion in my 1M65 movement that we will make more millionaires in Singapore, okay, out of Singaporeans. So I think make more Singaporeans millionaires. I think that's really our passion. That's yeah.
Lou, if I may add, I think the last time you told us a story, you shared a bit more on the personal side about how at some point you almost lost all your money in the markets, and it was through this friend who now you've been paying it forward in terms of teaching you some of the strategies, components of the strategy which you finally put together, which really got you on the path and got you going. So it's a truly inspirational story, coming back from near bankruptcy or thereabouts, having absolutely almost nothing to what you've accomplished today. So again, really impressive.
Thank you. Okay, so now I usually give a lot of talks on 1M65, and the 1M65, the topic is getting, for some of you all may be hearing this for the first time, but the topic is getting dry for me, and coupled with COVID-19 and the circuit breaker lockdown, I travel a lot in most of my time. But because of the lockdown, I could sit down and think and sit down and strategize. One of the questions I have was back to this slide, is that you may not have realized it, but if I at 30 years old, my wife at 30 years old, both of us achieved $130,000 at 65 years old, that the $130,000 will compound to $1 million. It means this, listen carefully, okay? It means that I don't need to work anymore for the rest of my life from 30 years old, and I'll still have, my wife and I will still have $1 million waiting for us, okay? So this strategy assumes that if I achieve this by 30 years old, I can have $1 million along with my wife at 30 years old, at 65 years old, assuming we do not work anymore for the rest of our life. But that's not a realistic assumption. The realistic assumption is that we'll continue to work, we'll continue to contribute money to our CPF, and we'll continue to put some money in investments, and we'll continue to live, right? So one of the questions I have for myself is, what if I continue to work, right, to the end of my life, or at least work to my retirement age. So anyway, let's
Lou,
fast
before we
forward.
go there, I mean, sorry, and just for background for everyone, Lou asked me to ask him a lot of hard questions here. And if the audience has any hard questions about what he's putting up, please feel free again to put it up in the question box. So can you walk us through the assumptions here? I think when a lot of people see this, they go, I don't have 130,000. I mean, how do I get 130,000? And what is 4%? Can you talk us through how you get to 130,000 at 30, 35 years of age? And a little, can you tell us, what it takes to get there?
I cannot tell everybody how you're going to make $130,000. I can tell everybody how we made $130,000. Okay. When we were young, okay, we were young in our late 20s and 30s. We worked very, very hard. We were very, very frugal, extremely frugal, and we were very wise with our money. We avoid expensive tours. We rent out our rooms. We work double jobs. I gave tuition while working. We did everything right. And when we have bonuses, I threw the bonus in cash right into our CPF special account, right? So this is exactly a real situation where when you're young, you be very frugal and you save as much as possible so that in your later life, you can have a lot of money, right? There's no magic formula to saving money and putting money into your CPF special account, except through guts and frugality.
Maybe you can tell everyone what percentage of your and your wife's combined income were you saving every month?
I don't recall exactly how much was my income back those years, but we were ordinary graduates. In those days, graduate probably make maybe $2,000 to $3,000 a month, $2,000 to $3,000 plus a month. Maybe at a later stage of my 20s to 30s, you'll probably make a bit more. When we have bonuses, we throw it in. So actually, it's not so much. It's really not so much about whether how much our income is, but really how much we save. Now, we have a 1M65 movement, and later I'll talk about it. In my 1M65 movement, there are thousands of people in the movement. They're all in our WhatsApp Telegram group. You guys are welcome to join it. But later I'll talk more about it. But more and more people in their late 20s and early 30s are writing to me and say that they have already met their FRS when they are 30 years old. FRS means their full retirement sum of 181,000. They have outdone me with what I've done many years ago. Of course, you can say that inflation has gone up and things like that. But you know what's the common story that I see behind all these guys? They are not high income earners, right? They are just very, very passionate and frugal savers, right? So really, I've seen what can be done is really a frugality and a lot of passion to make sure they fill it up.
So I think one question that has popped up already, Lou, is so 130,000, we get it. So basically, you work as hard as you can, but you save as much as you can. You're very, very careful in your early years. How about that 4% number? That numbers come up, I think, in a few questions people have. How do we know that the interest rate will continue to be that? How do we? I mean, I, for example, just read today that interest rates might go to 0 in Singapore. How will the government continue to pay 4%? And if that's not the case, I mean, will this really work?
Okay, perhaps we can address this question together with all the other policy-related questions later, because sure. I think we should continue this until my 4M65 story is finished.
Let's do that.
Then we can have a better grasp of all these policy questions. How about that?
Sure.
Okay. Please. So fast forward now. So I was then about 30 years old. We met our full retirement sum. So fast forward 15 years later, right? So at 15 years later, we crossed $1 million in our CPF combined account. Okay, so this is no longer 1M65. Some people say, "Oh, yeah, 1M65, seems impossible to achieve," right? A lot of people are asking this question. You know what? We have achieved 1M at 4.5, not 6.5, 4.5. And mind you, we have achieved this, and I'm again, as part of my movement, I see a lot of this CPF statement, and we've seen many people achieved it far stronger than I did. I just received one M50 alone. I'm here. I am 1 M45 for a couple, right? So I think this is a very exciting time at that when I was 45 years old. But can we move on next slide? So today I'm 48 years old, okay, and what's our CPF combined savings right now? Next, so what me and my wife achieved right now is $1.35 million in our CPF, okay, and this does not include those money we're thrown into our house. This is just money in our ordinary account, special account, MediSave account, and a bit of it in our CPFIS investments. So this is really pushing our special account and our MediSave account to plow as much interest as possible. Okay, so if at 48 years old is $1.35 million, and when I'm asking myself, what would our CPF be? Next slide, please. Okay, at 65 years old. Now, so this is where, fortunately or unfortunately, COVID-19 lockdown happened. Our circuit breaker caused me to have lots of time. Because of the lots of time in Singapore, I realized that I have the chance to calculate how much will I have at 65 years old. And to calculate how much we have at 65 years old, I enlisted the help of a 12 Excel expert from my 1M65 community. Okay, and I asked them to use my set of numbers and do a projection. Okay, I did a set of numbers and I sent my workings to them. They were shocked, and I was shocked first, and then they were shocked. Okay, and really, if we just do a projection of basing on our current income, okay, and let it just run, okay, and ignore assuming my CPFIS investment stay at what it is now, zero increase. My wife and I will have $3.2 million when we retire. Okay, now this is not a house sale number because I have seen, okay, people achieve a loan $1 over $1 million. It is not uncommon right now. Okay, just that they are very quiet about it. Okay, many retirees. Those that have make money generally, Singaporean Chinese, especially businessmen or people, they like to keep quiet about making money. But it is possible. I just do a very simple projection based on our continued contribution and our SA and MA and OA compounded at prevailing interest rates. And this comes out to $3.2 million. Now, next. Now, one of the assumptions I've made in $3.2 million is that my CPFIS investment will sit there and collect dust, right? There's about 174,000 there. But most of us will plow some of that investment into a reasonable stock and stocks and shares. What I like to do is to put the money into a index, and I favor S&P 500 index. People in my 1M65 movement will know I really like the S&P 500 index. And what if we actually put money into it and it makes a 7% return? I think historically it's maybe close to 9%, but let's say it closed at 7% return over the next 15 to 20 years. All right, let's take a look what the number will be next. Right. So if assuming that I put that $174,000 that's already there in CPFIS S&P 500. It's already there, and I let it compound at 7%. I will now have $3.8 million. Okay, $3.8 million is close to 4M, right? So now, then some people ask me, Mr. Loo, why you only put $174,000 into your S&P 500 if you believe at 7%? I say, yes, I don't believe in doing that. So what happened in this round of the COVID crash? I've already plowed in quite a sum of money into S&P 500, and I'm going to plow in more. And if I do that, and assuming at 20 years time, 15 to 20 years time, I'll achieve a 7% return. You know how much will I have in my total CPF balance? Okay, next. Yes, I will have $5.2 million. $5.2 million. Okay. Now, So this means that all my ordinary account will be thrown in S&P 500 or equivalent index. I will keep my special account and MediSave account uninvested because no one can beat their returns. Me and my wife continue to have an income of $6,000, assuming 1 month bonus, and we assume that the CPF contribution and interest rate remain unchanged. Okay. One thing I like to do is that I like to pay my housing mortgage in cash, and this is something that you might find difficult to do when you are young. But I think old, and if you have got HDB mortgage, which is not so big, I think it's very possible. So I pay my HDB mortgages in cash. Okay, so this actually, next slide please. This actually shows that 4M65 is achievable. All right. Yes.
Can I ask you a quick question? You talked about property, right? I think in Singapore, we've always been told that property is the way to get rich. And, obviously we all know people who have bought multiple properties and made a lot of money that way. I mean, how would you react to that? What would you tell people who asked you that question?
I think the good old days of the property growth are over. Okay. Property for most economies, right? Property will grow at the same rate generally as a GDP growth rate. Okay. Now, the demand for property is driven by two aspects. Number one, population. Number two, economic growth or income. Okay. You look at Singapore. Is our population growing? No, not really. Okay. Our population is so growth is so low right now. They even have government departments set up to help to drive fertility. Second is that we don't allow or we don't like too much foreigners coming in. If once the government let too much foreigners come in, what happened is that we all Singaporeans and then vote the government to death. So in 2012 election, was it 2012 election, 11, right? 2011 election or 12 election, we voted one GRC out. Okay, and up to today, the GRC is still lost. So I don't think the government will let too much foreigners come in. So if we don't have a lot of Singaporeans, if we don't have a lot of foreigners, and we don't have a lot of income growth, where on earth is that demand is going to come from? So I think the good old days of property growth is over. We were able to achieve a phenomenal property growth in the past from our independence to maybe about 10 years ago. Is because our economic growth then was phenomenal. We were called an Asian miracle, right? Asian 4 tigers. Today the tiger has become a cat. It's unfortunately our economic growth has tapered off. So I don't think the good old days of property growth property price escalation and appreciation will continue.
Thank you. And so, along that same line, I mean, if you don't recommend that people invest in property, should people still buy a property to live in? I mean, how do we think about that?
Now, of course, you need a roof over your head, and the roof over your head is extremely important. And I believe that in asset, don't talk about just if you don't talk about just whether you should buy or rent or whatever, just talk about asset allocation. I think for diversity reasons, we should have some in property, okay? But I think having one house by itself is more than enough, okay, for most people. I've only one house anyway, and I have only HDB. I'm a big, huge disbeliever of buying private property. It's absolutely not money's worth.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so maybe go to the next 2 or 3 slides, and then we can end this this talk, and then we can answer a lot of questions which I think most people have. So a lot of people ask Mr. Loo, so how much CPF will I have when I at 65? You say that you and your wife will have $4 million. I want to find out how much do I have. You know what? Something great is that one of our 1M65 fans actually developed an app. And the app is available in our Telegram channel. Please sign up to the Telegram channel t.me/Loo1m65. There's an app there where you can download. Okay, once you download it, you can try key in your number, and we will be able to help you predict what you will have by the time you reach 65 years old. And this will also guide you to your right strategy, how you should put deploy your CPF. So I strongly encourage everybody to follow us in our Telegram channel. We have a lot of passionate, very passionate finance expert in the group, helping you answer all your finance, investments, and CPF questions. The app is there to help you to project. We really welcome everybody to join. Now, for some people who don't know what Telegram is, it's like a WhatsApp. So just download the app and you'll be able to follow us. It's an incredible application. Next, please. So many of you will ask, so no, Mr. Loo, how do I achieve 4M65? All right, these are the conditions. Number one is stay married. Okay. Some people ask, so 4M65 for a couple means one person 2M65. Is it true? Answer is no. There is a lot of synergy if the husband and wife can work financially well together and save and invest together. If you were to be a single, it's very difficult to do 2M65 using your CPF. And one of the simple reasons is that you got to pay for many expenses alone and many of your housing mortgages alone, where you have load sharing between spouses if you have a couple. Now, in the light of the COVID crisis, I need to say that we need to stay healthy also, right? You need to be able to live to 65 years old and we'll work to 65 years old. And very importantly, at least have an income of $6,000 a person. Now, someone said, sorry, Mr. Loo, I don't have $6,000. Well, to have $4 million a couple, you need to have some basic, at least a medium high income. Now, $6,000 a person, is it difficult? Arguably, yes, okay. But, in Singapore, where the labor market is usually very tight, it is possible if you work really hard, work overtime, it is very possible to get $6,000 with 1 month of AWS, You need to be, fair, at least try to get yourself a university education and so on. Now, some of you might say, I don't have that, Well, make sure your kids have that, right? So at least a strategy to make sure your offsprings will live to get 4M65. I don't use my CPF for my property mortgages because the CPF in the CPF ordinary account and special account, they yield a very high interest. I use cash because cash has a very little interest right now. I think now it's near zero for CPF, sorry, for your cash deposit in the bank. So last is at least put some part of your CPF portfolio into an equity investment that yields 7%. To be frank, right now I only know that maybe a globally diversified fund or a S&P 500 equivalent will be able to achieve that. I don't believe in stock picking, and later we can have questions on that as well. Okay. So what's holding everybody back to become a CPF millionaire? I think that I've talked to maybe at least 20 to 30,000 people. Okay, 20 to 30,000 people. The most two common things that held back everybody to be a CPF millionaire is, number one, you don't have faith in the CPF system. You don't have faith in the government, right? You don't have faith that they will not change the system. They will change the system in a negative way. So a lot of people lost faith, and the minute they can have a chance to withdraw money, they'll pull it out, thinking that the CPF is out to condemn, right? By doing that, you lost a lot of money and lost a lot of opportunity. Second is that there's a lot of people with blind faith in property. I think Singaporeans love property investment, right? And it's a blind faith. For the last 10 years, property investment has not even beaten 2.5% in return compared to that in the CPF. And arguably so in the next 10, 20, 30 years as well. And last is that your stock investment need to be of the right strategy. A lot of Singaporeans like to buy pick stocks. Today they buy SIA and then they lose money. They pick Singtel, they lose money. They buy DBS, they don't get compounding. A lot of the stocks that they pick are wrong, and I think it's a wrong investment strategy. Right? Their stock investment does not compound. Occasionally they make a one puff earnings, in terms of maybe the share price increase from $5 to $6 to $7, and that's it, right? You need to have a stock investment strategy that compound, and if you're interested, we can talk about it during the Q&A. Okay, so I will leave more time. Next slide. I'll leave more time to Q&A. But this is essentially my 1965 Telegram chat group, the t.me/Loo1965. Please join us. We are there to help fellow Singaporeans to grow your financial literacy and help you to answer all your questions on investment, right? And we don't charge a single cent. And most of people there that help out, we are not financial advisors. We don't make money out of this thing. Okay. So okay, back to you, Youning.
Yes, Mr. Loo, first of all, I think we should change this to 4M65 since you showed us it's possible.
Okay, that's a good point.
A question for you that actually came up in my mind as I was going through this, and I'll jump into a lot of questions that other people have as well. When you do your 4M65 calculations, are you only assuming that CPF contributions? I mean, what happens to the cash that you're earning aside from your CPF contributions and your top-ups?
Okay, so first of all, for many, why I focus on CPF is because the CPF has been locked up anyway. There's a lot of people not properly deploying their CPF, and I encourage everybody to utilize their CPF to invest because it's less painful. Okay, it's less frightening, and it has longevity because most people would think that the CPF has been locked up there for a long time anyway. Okay, so I think CPF as an investment tool is very superior. Now, for your cash investment, yes, I think you should have a sound cash investment strategy as well. It's the same thing for most investors. I would think that 99% of investors would not know how to stock pick properly. I would still encourage most people to adopt a passive investment strategy that harness the power of compounding of S&P 500 or equivalent.
So you talk about, so in your 4M65 calculation, I mean, do you include any sort of returns from cash investing, or can you even go beyond 4M65?
No, I absolutely included nothing from cash. So
wow.
You might have some cash investment in your own stocks, in your property, in anything, or any assets, gold. None of that are factored into a 4M65 calculation.
That's pretty incredible. That's pretty incredible. So coming back, you keep mentioning S&P 500. So why S&P 500? I mean, how about China, India, Europe? I mean, why not MSCI World? Why not the Singapore Index? Can you talk a bit about, I mean, why S&P 500?
I've written quite a few articles on the S&P 500. In fact, recently I just wrote one saying that S&P 500 is far more superior than our Straits Times Index. I think, first of all, you need to understand what the S&P 500 index is made up of. It's made up of the top 500 companies in US and rest of the world. And these are the top, most of them are from US. These are the top 500 companies, your Google, your Facebook, your McDonald's, Starbucks, and all these big US companies, they are there. And these are not just the best company in their league, they are also diversified across the whole world. They have got participation in the entire market. They have got Starbucks, you can find them almost throughout the whole world, from Middle East to India to China to Asia and to Europe as well. So it's a very diversified coverage. So therefore, these are the top companies, and you can be sure that the top companies will do very well over time. And this is despite the US having a GDP of 2%, the S&P 500 has been rocketing at some phenomenal percent for the last 100 years. Okay, and that's because they picked the top US companies, to go inside the 500 list. So if you were to pick a China, you pick a Europe, whatsoever, yes, I think some of them will do fairly well, but you cannot compare to the world top economy of US, where he has a huge domestic market US, and they have ability to go global, right? So it is a very very interesting strategy to just bet on one index. But index has proven itself over the last 100 years across 2 world wars, across the Great Depression, across the oil crisis, across the dot-com bust, across September 11, and I'm very sure it will survive the COVID-19 as well. So that's why I really favor this index.
Understood. So one question we're getting is would you do an SA top up? I guess what you talk about. Would you take that money and invest in the S&P 500? I mean, would you take that 4% or would you take that stock market return? How should people think about that?
I think when investors look at returns, you cannot just look at returns alone. Okay, if you want good returns, go buy Toto, right? You pay $1 and you can strike. I don't know. Sometimes sorry, $2 you can strike. It can go as high as $10 million, something like that. The returns are very high. But let's talk about the risk. The risk is very high. You almost never in the whole life will ever strike Toto. So you cannot just look at returns. Looking at returns without looking at the risk is very blindsided. So when someone look at the SA, the special account, and it gives 4 to 5% return, yes, 4 to 5% return is not high compared to a 7 to 9% S&P 500 return, but the risk is near zero, right? At near zero risk, 4 to 5%, I don't think there's anything in the world that rivals it. Now, if you're willing to take some risk, okay, then try not to use your special account. Use your ordinary account. Your ordinary account anyway gives 2.5% return only, so not that big. Yes, 2.5% is quite high compared to some bank interest rate, but it's not that phenomenally high. So 2.5% is, I would personally be more willing to invest in S&P 500 using my ordinary account.
Understood. Thank you. And talking about that, the question I asked earlier, I mean, 4%, the assumption of 4% and 2.5%. I think some people have concerns given where interest rates are today. What would you say to those people?
Now, the government has been maintaining the interest rates at this for the last two decades or so. I think the key thing is whether the interest rate will continue to be at 4 to 5% return. Officially, we should peg ourselves to the bond return rates, which will be maybe about 3.5% or something like that. But the government has been maintaining that. Put it that way, I think so far with all the economic crisis we have seen, the government has not reduced that the interest rates. What is the likely? Let's think about chances, okay? If you were to, let's think of chances, what would be the scenario where the government will have to lower the interest rates of the special account and special account of 4% or the ordinary account of 2.5%? The scenario for that to happen would be a major prolonged economic crisis of some form, major crisis of some form. And to lower that has a high political cost. Many votes will be lost. So the government, to my opinion, will be very reluctant to do that. Okay, they will be very reluctant to do that. So therefore, in the event that were to happen, and it can happen, okay, that would happen, I can almost say for sure, almost all other investment out there will be giving you shitty returns anyway. So even let's say 4% drop to 3.5%, you still cannot find something that beat 3.5% because almost everything would have tanked and gone down as well in that scenario. So I would say the chances is low, not no, okay, not zero. But in that day, where that day were to happen, every other investment will give you shit returns anyway. So it will still be the least worst return.
Understand. And how do you get comfortable with the fact that the government won't change the rules on CPF, or when we can take it out, or how much we can take out, aside from the interest rate? How do you get comfortable with that?
Most of the government policies are for the people, or at least designed meant to help people. Although many Singaporeans don't agree that. First of all, I'm not from a PAP and I don't take any money from the government. Every Singaporean is like to take out money as quick as possible, right? Not knowing that sometimes when the money is left inside actually give you higher return. Now, the question is, the question is really, will they change the goalpost to, let's say, give you money later? Maybe, right? And in fact, they have been doing that by increasing the FRS. But you got to understand what's the reason why. It's because inflation is going up, cost of living is going up. They're increasing the limit, okay, so that they got more money to spread out the money they can give to you over CPF Life. So in that sense, most of the policy changes are for the better of the people. There are segments of Singaporean that likes to have cash early, quickly, as much as possible. Not knowing that these are actually very short-sighted, very shallow in their financial thinking, but actually, those people, you think about it, those people that make money in a property, are not those people who quickly pull out money from a property. They let them sink there, they let them invest for a long period of time, and eventually their value goes up. Same for CPF in some extent. The compounding must take its effect. So in that sense, I would suggest that that the likelihood of a negative policy, okay, a negative policy that does against the interests of Singaporean financially, is very rare. They can increase certain limits, but eventually they will give you back the money anyway.
Understood. I think one question that we have from a few people is that I think this talk, I think what you're sharing works really well if maybe you have just started working and you have a path to 130,000, right, at an age of 30, 35. What would you say to people that are slightly older, someone who's maybe 35 today, or someone who is, in their 50s? I mean, what can they do, and what advice do you have for them?
In the past, when I give a 1M65 talk for those people in their 50s and 60s, I'll tell them, I'm sorry, it's too late. It's too late, please educate your kids. That statement still stays on educating your kid. But however, recently I begin to see that actually, there are a lot of people at 70, 80 years old are very, very, very active, and maybe even economically active. We have got now prime ministers at 90 years old. We have got presidents at 71 or 72 years old. We've got Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is leading the entire fight against the virus from US. He's 78 or 79 years old. He looked very young. So therefore, I think our time horizon for our money and compounding must be stretched beyond 65. In short, my personal advice is that 65, don't be in a rush to take out money. It's got a high compounding interest inside. Let it compound, Take out, look at retirement now as an age at 70 or 75 years old. It doesn't mean that you have to work until 75 years old, but time to withdraw most of your CPF. Let that time horizon stretch a bit to 70, 75 years old. If that's the case, then now at 45, 50, or 55 years old, it is still okay, to harness the power of compounding. Now, you may not be 4M65, but you may be 4M at 70, or more at 4M at 75. It's okay as well, right? That's perfectly okay. So I think the time horizon that everyone should set, if you are late, okay, is have a humbler return, but don't let that stop you from making more returns in future. The second thing is that if you are really way past the age, educate your kids as well, because your kids would now be in their 20s or in their early 30s. Educate your children right now to harness this strategy. I was lucky. I met someone who taught me this when I was in my late 20s. Okay, now I make it a point right now that everybody should hear this as early as possible. So I actually like to talk more to young people. For those old audiences I'm speaking to right now, if it's really too old for you, let your children know, or let your children's children know, right? Let your nephew and nieces know that this is possible. They should harness this when they are young.
Understood. Yeah, I would also add that, it's never too late to start. I think that to this day and age, people live a lot longer. So, traditionally we think of retirement at 65, and, if you're 45, 55, 60 today, you think, oh no, I'm almost at retirement and pull my money out. But in reality, I think if people live to 85, 90, 95, which most likely people will attending this talk, I think we need to plan far beyond that. So I think starting to invest even at that age is not a terrible idea as well. I think, can you talk a bit more about your SA top-up strategy, Mr. Loo? I think Some people have questions about that, about specifically what you did and how you got to those numbers that you showed.
Well, there is no real magic to it. It's simply be as young as possible, start filling up your SA, your special account. Many people, especially many young parents, does not know that your child at birth, okay, will have a CPF account. You can start topping up their special account from when they are 1 month old or something like that. You can start topping up. If you want to make them millionaires to have $1 million by 65 years old, you just need to give them $80,000. The natural rate of compounding will help them achieve $1 million when they're 65. So therefore, really, there is no secret but to quickly and as fast as possible push as much money from your OA or put some cash into SA from as young as possible and let it compound, right? There's no magic formula, but sure frugality, sure guts in making sure that you push money inside. Now, take note that the money to go inside SA is one direction. Once you go in, you cannot come out until you are 55 years old. So therefore, it requires a lot of guts. But you know what? You know, big money awaits those who are gutsy.
Understood. There are a few questions about what you said about paying mortgage in cash and why you recommend that. You know, people asking why not use your CPF, etc. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Okay, so right now your CPF. Okay, assuming you have money in your CPF and your money in cash, right? If you take money out from a CPF to pay your monthly mortgages, the CPF gives, let's say your monthly mortgage is $1,000 every month, okay? And you can either pay that in cash or pay that using your CPF ordinary account. But the ordinary account, if you leave the $1,000 inside, it makes you 2.5% a year, okay? But if you use cash from a bank, okay, usually the interest rates is low, okay? And I think the housing mortgage rate right now is 1.2, 1.3%. And therefore, you are actually making money by leaving money in your CPF and using cash to pay, right? So you actually make the difference of the 2.5% and 1.3%. You make a difference of probably 1.2%. So having cash to pay for your money mortgage actually helps in this difference.
Got it. This is sort of more of a slightly different question, but I think a few people have highlighted the fact that obviously your SA contributions are illiquid and you can't touch it. And people have asked, you know, should we think about setting some money aside? Obviously, this is more of an opinion thing. And if so, how much should we do it? What advice do you have for them?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again? Set money aside for what?
Sort of, sort of an emergency fund, rainy day fund, because of the illiquidity of your CPF top-ups, right? You can't pull it out to use it for a lot of things other than maybe medical bills in certain cases. But, you know, how much should people put aside for emergency rainy day fund? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think a holistic financial planning should look at the following. Number one is that you need to first set aside money for not just a rainy day, but for a stormy day, right? And I think COVID-19 really taught us that not just rain will come, and storms can come, okay? I used to think that amount of 3 to 6 months would be enough. Now I extended my advice to 6 to 9 months, okay? I think most of people need to have 6 to 9 months of emergency fund, enough to pay for your mortgages, enough to pay for family expenses. After that, you need to make sure that you have got your insurance all set up. And insurance, I highly favor term insurance. I think that whole life insurance is a big waste of money, and in some case, you know, I even use the word that is a big boo-boo, you know, to buy a whole life insurance. I think terms insurance get you the most value for money. Okay, and after you settle that, next you need to look at your financial safety net or 1M65. Set it up first. Okay, make sure you top up as much as possible on SA. Once you get it all set up, you can use the rest of cash for more risky investment in stocks, shares, or property, I think that'll be fine. So you need to look at this as holistically. So there is a long answer to a question. I just specifically and reiterate the point. I think you need to prepare an emergency fund of 6 to 9 months for a stormy day. Okay, this is probably the new mantra right now.
Understood. Thank you. I think there are a few questions now about sort of investing strategy. I mean, what are your thoughts about, buy low, sell high, market timing? Can you talk a bit more about your investment strategy on specific stock picking versus indexes? I think those are two questions that you touched on briefly, but can you talk a bit about that a bit more?
Okay, first of all, I don't believe in stock picking. Okay, I don't believe that an ordinary investor can make good money from stock picking unless you are a Warren Buffett or Charles Munger or some of those very, very good investors out there in the world. I think it's very difficult to stock pick. Only really very few winners on this in this field. And I think even experts' advice is that for an ordinary investor, you should put money into an asset that compounds over a long time. There are very few indices that compounds over a long time. One of them is S&P 500. I think the Dow Jones also can compound as well. They almost move in the same direction. Nasdaq as well. I would say the good balance would be S&P 500. I know Endowus has a CPF product, and fortunately or unfortunately now they are the only company in Singapore that you can invest your OA into S&P 500. I put some money into Endowus to purchase S&P 500 because they're the only company that do that. And S&P 500 generally returns a good return of 7% to 9% over a long period of time. I am a person who likes to time cycles. Okay, I don't like time the market, I like time cycles in a sense that when it crashes, I buy more. When it's rising, I buy less. I still continue to buy. I'm a net buyer. I don't sell much shares unless I've been proven wrong. I have been proven wrong before, but I'm a net believer of buying a index like S&P 500 and let it go. So recently the market crashed big time. So I invest a lot more. Okay, a lot more when it crashed. Okay, but the problem is that for most people, when it crashed, everybody believes it'll crash more. Everybody will try to catch the bottom of the market. But most people won't be able to catch the bottom market, neither can I. So I think if it crash, I think for me, I believe in buying in crashes. So if it crashes to a certain number, I'll just go in and buy some, and I'll spread out the purchases over a long period, over a fairly moderate period of time. Okay.
Understood. And I think attached to this, someone asked, did you start this exact question? Did you start investing early in your career? I mean, did that contribute to the 130,000? I think that's quite interesting because it sort of backfills into your story as well.
The 130,000 is purely a story of sure frugality, savings, work really hard, and salary into the 130,000. No investment return. In fact, in some of my other presentation on 165, I will be able to share with you that I actually almost went bankrupt when I was in my early 20s because of Asia financial crisis and poor investments. But we worked very hard. Me and my wife, I remember we have got a 4-room flat and we rent out, 2 of the rooms, and I worked 2 jobs, and we didn't have much holiday to talk about. We go Johor or Malacca for holidays, stay in simple 2 or 3-star hotels, and that's our life for early years of my life. So just in case some people think that I'm, that 1M65 means I continue to starve and eat roti and bread, roti every day, but no, I don't do that now. I live quite a quality life right now. But in early days, we were really very frugal, knowing that $1 invested then will make me $3 to $4 or $5 in future.
Right. Do you have, someone is asking about SRS. Do you use SRS at all?
Yes, I do. Now, for some people who don't know what SRS means, it's a supplementary retirement scheme. Okay, so it is a fund that's set up for what we call tax deferment, and that's the idea that you could put a sum of money. I think it's $12,000 or something like that every year into SRS account, and your tax on the $12,000 will be deferred until a later year. So if let's say I have a 10% tax burden right now, and when I retire, my tax burden goes down to zero. My tax bracket goes down to zero because I have no income. Then I can pull out that $12,000 with zero tax. So it's a tax deferment scheme. So I do that because my tax bracket is fairly high. I need to warn everybody that I think 60 to 70% of Singaporeans do not pay income taxes. And I would say that another 5 to 10% pay low taxes. If that's the case, then SRS is really not much of a meaning for you. And the returns in the SRS account is near zero unless you use it for investment. So I wouldn't give SRS a too high amount, except for those people who have had high tax personal income tax bracket.
Understood. Thank you. That's very helpful. I think one other question, which would be good for you to shed a bit of color on. Someone's asking, having children not a consideration, and about sort of don't the expenses you spend on children and how expensive children are affect your 1M65 or 4M65 goal?
Answer is yes and no. Okay, I would just say this: a lot of the children's expenses is a formula of parents' expectation. A lot of parents, because they have high expectation for the kids, they want them to get the best. They end up spending a lot of money. I'll give a very simple example. Okay, when I have 3 kids. My kids was born, they use the diapers. The diapers have many different brands. The top brand can cost one piece of diaper can cost close to $1 each, and the cheap ones like Huggies and I can't remember what other brands have. My kids are all in their teens now. They cost maybe 40-50 cents each, and then the NTUC and Giant brands, they cost about 10-20 cents each. Yeah, they have got quality differences, and they say, my kids are allergic to this one whatsoever. But you know what? That's what life is, right? So if you want the best, the Pampers will cost you $1. Okay, the Huggies will cost you 50 cents, and the Giant and NTUC brand will cost you 10-20 cents each. I don't know what's the price now. That was a price then. Same for the kids, right? Do you want to give them a quality of life that's high or quality of life that's low? I know of many families that bring up kids very expensively, and many families that bring up kids in a very cheap way, right? So it's really up to them. One of the things I make sure my kids do is I make them work during their holidays, starting from their secondary school. A lot of parents would have shielded their kids from this. I will push them to earn their income. So really, whether a kid spend a lot of money or not is really up to you, right? It's really up to you.
Understood. Mr. Loo, if you indulge me, would you mind giving me 10 or 15 minutes to go through some slides I have before we jump back to questions?
Please. Yes, please.
Great. And again, just to highlight what Loo was saying, he's been a fantastic supporter of us, but there's honestly no financial relationship between us. Sometimes what he talks about is a little bit different from what we talk about, but we think Loo has a fantastic strategy, and if that's the type of style that you're comfortable with, I think that's fantastic. Just again, quick background. My name is Youning. I'm the co-founder of Endowus. I'm born and bred Singaporean. I've always been in the finance and investment community. My first job out of university was investment banking at Goldman Sachs. I moved on to private equity at Blackstone. I worked at 2 hedge funds in the US, did my MBA, and then came back to Singapore about 7 years ago and worked as the CIO of a large family office based in Singapore before starting Endowus with a few friends. The reason we started at Endowus was because when I came back to Singapore, I found investing here very difficult to find high quality investment opportunities. I found it very difficult everything was offline. I had to go stand in line at a bank to open an account. I found it hard to transfer money. I also found it very expensive. Fees have always been very important to me, and I'll talk a bit more about that shortly. But I always believed in keeping fees as low as possible, especially for your retirement portfolio. So we started Endowus with the hope of bringing high quality, low cost, sort of dummy investing for dummy type portfolios where you just can't go wrong to people in Singapore, for the 99% of us who either don't have the time, don't have the knowledge, or don't have the ability to pick their own stocks. Again, just a standard disclaimer for the MAS. Just to make sure everyone can see my slides. Hopefully, Lou, you can see my slides.
Yes, I do.
Great. Yeah. So I think coming back to it, there've been a few questions about is 4 million enough? How much money do you need at retirement? This is, and Lou may disagree with me, but this is how I think about it. I think first of all, to answer that question, you need to think about how much you need. You need to think about how much you're spending on a monthly basis. By then, hopefully your children are out of school, no more extracurriculars to pay for. Hopefully they can pay for themselves by then. So it'll be sort of regular going expenses for yourself. I think 100,000, Lou's very frugal, so he probably doesn't hit this a year, but someone who wants to go for a few holidays a year or something like that may need this much. So you back solve. If you need 100,000 a year, what's your expected return? And most of us want to be able to leave something for their children. So if you kind of take out inflation and back solve that, to get $100,000 a year of income that you can spend without tapping it, without going into your base capital or trimming the burn, you need a few $1 million actually. So what Lou is highlighting is actually, I think quite helpful. That probably at 4 million probably allows you a bit more than 100,000 a year in terms of annual spending, which is a lot. And the reason why you really have to invest, I think Singapore has a shockingly high number of people who leave their money in fixed deposit or just in a bank in cash because they're scared of investing, they don't have time to do it, right? Is because inflation really, really eats away your returns. If you're making 0.5, 0.2% a year on your cash deposits, I mean, movie tickets, I still remember when I was young, movie tickets were $5, $6 each. Now it's $12. It's doubled in 10 or 15 years, right? So that inflation rate will really, really eat away.
My time was 150 and 250 for movie tickets.
I guess you're a bit older than me. But yeah, so inflation really eats away at your money. So please, no matter what you do, no matter how you invest, just invest it, right? CPF, SA top-ups are great. Investing in Endowus is great as long as you get invested, as long as you get started, right? And again, this is why you must invest. For me, I would never leave my money in OA. I think Mr. Loo's sort of SA top-up strategy has legs, but it all depends on your risk profile. 7 to 9% a year on the S&P or global indexes is very doable. And the crazy thing is, if you put $1 in and 40 years later, if you're earning 2.5% per year versus 7%, right? You get $15 versus $2.7, which is crazy. It's 13 times more money, basically, right? So I think investing is really, really important if you want to get away from the inflation issue. And to speak to Mr. Loo's point about the S&P 500 or his indexing strategy versus individual stock selection, I think we have to realize and acknowledge our weaknesses. One of the most important things to do as an investor is to realize and acknowledge that we are all really bad at regulating our emotions, and our emotions cause the average investor to perform substantially worse than the market. If you look at this chart, the US markets have done 10% per year over the last 30 plus years. And by the way, this is to 2016. The stock market's probably doubled from there. So it's even higher today, right? And look at every single asset class has been higher than the average investor. The reason for this is because we buy at the wrong time, we sell at the wrong time. Markets are collapsing, we get scared and sell when really we should be buying. When markets are near the top, we get excited because our friends are making so much money and put our money in. So we make a lot of behavioral mistakes, which make it really, really tough for us. So similar to Mr. Loo's sort of regular contribution strategy, I've always been a fan of saying, okay, if I can afford a few $100s a month or $1,000 or $2,000 a month, just committing to that, turning that on and doing that regular investment every month, no matter what happens. And why you really just have to start today. I think for a lot of people, the hardest part is starting. The first step is always the hardest, right? And the reason why you have to start now, even if it's just $50, $100, a few $1,000s, even if it's 1% of what you have, you just have to start today. Because the earlier you start, the better off you'll be. A lot of what Mr. Loo is talking about is compounding, right? And compound interest is truly phenomenal. This is 3 examples, Tom, Dick, and Harry, of 3 friends who invested at different times, made different amounts of money through their career. Harry started at 25, investing for 10 years and invested $10,000 a year. Very disciplined, started very early. Was like Mr. Loo, didn't go on fancy holidays, didn't go to fancy restaurants when he first started working, and saved every dime he could. He only invested 100,000. Dick, 10,000 a year. He started a bit later. He enjoyed sort of the early years, spent most of what he made, but he did it for 20 years. So 10,000 a year for 20 years between the age of 35 to 55. In total, he invested 200,000. Tom, on the other hand, late start, right? Maybe early on, he really lived a really, really nice lifestyle, right? Spent everything he made until he hit 45 and went, okay, now I'm a parent, now I'm a father, I gotta start saving money, right? So at the start age of 45, he starts saving 15,000 a year. In total, he saves 300,000. The crazy thing is the same 7% return for all these 3 people, right? Even though Tom has put in 3 times more money than Harry over the years, right? Harry ends up with twice as much money as Tom. And this is really why, no matter what you do, just start as soon as you can. Even if it's a little bit amount of money, even if you think you're just starting work and you don't have that much, and even if you think it's a bit too late, no matter what it is, just start today. Because no matter where you are in your point, as much time as you can get on that investing clock, the better. And that market timing question again, we get a lot of questions around, is it a good time to go in the market? And if you join Mr. Loo's Telegram group, and which is phenomenal, I strongly suggest you join it. Unfortunately, people ask a lot about market timing, right? I have a slightly different view on market timing. I just don't have the ability to do it. I think Loo has been quite successful over the years, so it really depends on what view you take, right? But even the world's worst investor, we try to make an example out of here, has done pretty okay in the markets long term, right? In our view, it's time in the markets and not timing the markets that works. What I mean by that is the longer you're invested, the better. Back to the compounding point. This is an example of an investor who over the years has invested $100,000 every 12 to 14 years. He invests a bit of money and really, really, really sway, right? The moment he invests, market drop. 1973, wake up, invest 100,000, wow, market drop 37% the next day, right? 1987, after 14 years, finally get courage to invest again, market drops 20% the next day, right? And on and on and on. If you look at this example, you would have thought this guy would have done really, really poorly because his timing is just really, really, really bad. But really, at the end of all of this, just because he buy and hold, right? His annualized return is 8+%, which is a lot, right? Which is much better than the 2.7% that you saw earlier that the average investor makes, right? This is 3 to 4 times more. So the point is just that and even better if you had regularly, consistently invested every month, you'd be in a much, much better position. So again, it's about how often and how regularly you invest and how long you're invested for, in my personal view, versus trying to time the markets completely. I talked about cost at the beginning. Endowus was founded, part of it because I was just shocked and horrified at the cost that existed in investing in Singapore. And this is a research report. This is a piece of a report which was done by Morningstar. Morningstar is the de facto expert in the US when it comes to rating unit trust or mutual funds, which they call it in the US, right? And they did this incredible piece of research, which basically showed that their 5-star rating, if you're familiar with who they are, was completely useless. And frankly, the expense ratio is the most proven predictor of future fund returns. So across every category of funds they track, whether it be US stocks, international stocks, bonds, and all these other fancy sectors that you might not be familiar with in Singapore because these are US specific, right? They found that the cheaper the fund in terms of total expense ratio or fund management fee, the better the results, right? And the reason for that's very simple. And you look across every single one, it's up and to the left, right? Complete relationship, direct relationship, correlation, right? Because really small differences in fees compound with huge returns in the long term, right? So let's say you started out with $1 million. Well, you've done really, really well. You've done even better than Mr. Loo at 35. You have $1 million in your investment account, right? You compound that over 30 years. All it takes is a 1% difference in fees every year for you to lose out on 2.5 times return. What I mean by that, you start with $1 million. If you make 8.5%, you end with 10 million. If you earn 7.5%, you earn 7.6. So that 1% difference in fees every year costs you 2.5 times your original investment, which is just incredible. And that's why, again, we really, really focus on fees at Endowus. And so back to Mr. Loo's point about diversification, I always use the example of Olivia Lam, incredible entrepreneur. She went from living in a car to creating water, clean water, right? clean water, Singapore short water, selling water. How much further can you get from, or how much more can you be providing an essential that people need to live, right? EY Entrepreneur of the Year, multi-millionaire, one of the hottest stocks in Singapore for a while. Temasek backed her at some point, but it all went wrong. I mean, this stock went to zero, right? Even the bondholders lost money on this, right? So the point is that no matter how great the prospects of a particular company, you can never tell what's going to happen with the stock unless, maybe you're Warren Buffett. And I know people can do that, but really for the rest of us who don't have the time, ability, or energy to do that, or knowledge to do that, you should really just buy a very broad-based index fund like the S&P 500 or the MSCI All World, or something else like that, just to take that 6, 7, 8% a year. That's enough. Don't try to shoot the lights out, because when you compound 6, 7, 8, 9% a year, you just have an incredible result in the back end, like we said just now, right? After 30 years, 8.5% goes 10 times, right? So very quickly, a shameless plug for Endowus, digital platform. We allow you to invest your CPF, SRS in cash. We're the only ones that allow you to do that in Singapore. We partnered with UOB Kay Hian. So all accounts that are opened with us, your money actually sits with UOB Kay Hian. UOB Kay Hian is actually executing the trades with on your behalf, but you're actually using our interface, which, no offense, Belinda, I think is a little bit easier to use than UOB Kay Hian's. And we do all the reporting, but you also get a separate report from UOB Kay Hian, so you know your money's safe, even if we disappear tomorrow. Again, we're all about getting access to the best funds in the world with the best fund managers at the lowest cost. We give you advice. We help you work through what your investment portfolio should look like. And we've cut all the costs we can out of it. We're the cheapest in Singapore. And if you look at where our fees are at 0.4% for CPF, that is what CPF is trying to get to in a year and a half. And they actually cut fees in our direction after they heard what we could do. If you look at the mandated fee reductions in the CPFIS program. So again, you go online, you'll see some recommended portfolios. Vanguard, Kimco, Dimensional, those are fund managers. We work literally the largest in the world. Simple, clean, one-off fee. No funny business from us, no upfront charges, no exit charges, nothing. You buy today, sell tomorrow. We won't hold that against you. You get all your money back. And one of the coolest things about Endowus is if you have children. I have 2 children. One is 3 months and one is 2 years. In addition to I'm lucky, I saved up a bit of money from my earlier years working in finance. In addition to topping up their SA voluntarily, you can also start an investment portfolio for them within your goals for Endowus. So as part of, I have multiple goals. One is retirement, and 2 of them are for my children. And every month I put in a few $100s into their retirement, into their account, which hopefully either when they go to university or when they eventually decide to come out and try to do something on their own, I can support them a little bit in that, or maybe help them with a property. This is a plug for us. Lou has kindly graced us multiple times before, and there's a talk on YouTube which you can go and replay. But we do talks every week. Our next one is next week Wednesday at 7 p.m. So very sorry for jumping in, but Lou, you had 400 over people, and I figured I would never get a better chance to shamelessly grab people's ears. So thank you all for putting up with me on that. So I think.
So can I just say this to everybody? In the past, CPF cannot be used for S&P fund investment. I don't know how this company called Endowus managed to convince CPF to allow fellow Singaporeans to invest through CPF through them. So this is a major breakthrough. When that happens, I put money right into it, because there's no other investment that's more sure, at least more guarantee. Not guarantee is the wrong word. They are more comfortable in making me a good return over a long period of time. So anyway, you have to be. My thought is this: anyway, my CPF is stuck there. My ordinary account is stuck there for until I'm 55 to 65 years old anyway. So why not you a better return, right? So I think that's why I really like how this company really do it, and I think the way they did it was really they collect less fees. That makes CPF happy. So that's how it is. I wouldn't oversell, because as I said, I don't get any money from them, but I think this is why I think they have a great product.
Thank you. And again, just to be very transparent, when we after we did our first talk with Mr. Loo, and we sat down with him and he helped us strategize about our digital marketing strategy and sort of our positioning, we went, wow, this guy's great. Mr. Loo, would you like to be an advisor? Can we give you some shares so that you're aligned with our success? And he said, absolutely not. He said, I don't want to be conflicted. I want to have I want to be able to tell people what to do without having any obligations at all. So again, thank you again for being, so helpful for us and saying such great things about us. So,
yeah, but you still owe me a char siu fan. Yeah, you haven't given me it.
That is true. So we do buy him char siu fan from time to time, which is our form of compensation.
And you still owe me a few char siu fan.
Yes. So I think I know the answer to this, but someone is asking, going back to your question, Mr. Loo, and again, sorry for taking up your time. Did you voluntarily top up your children's SA account?
Yes, and I top up quite a lot. Yeah, because I believe in giving them a financial safety net. Now, I want to put more color to this. Now, many times as parents, we want to give the kids a lot of money to make sure they have a comfortable life. But let's not forget that giving them too much money too early actually will be counterproductive. Now, imagine that you give them too much money too early. They have no incentive to work. You will destroy their incentive to work hard, to go out to the world, to be hardened. So I think putting money in a CPF is the best place, because most of the kids in their teens, 20s, and even 30s, they'll mix with the wrong friends, do stupid investments, and mix with wrong women or men, and waste their money away and things like that. But most people, by the time they reach 50, 55 years old, they become very wise with money. So that's why I like to give them money as a safety net for their retirement. I like to give them money later. I don't like to give them money early. All right, that will destroy their incentive to work hard. It destroy their incentive to be street smart and money wise.
Got it. Someone is asking what you do with your sort of rainy day money. Where do you put that?
I don't touch it. By the fact that
is it fixed deposit? Where do you put that money?
Now well, to be frank, I don't have a very high expenses. We live quite simply. We stay in HDB. I have one small car which is really fully paid up, so I don't really have a lot of money needed for my stormy day. So I just leave it in the bank. Okay. But yes, if you want a high return, you can put in a fixed deposit or things like that. But most people I would suggest that try to keep your stormy day money as liquid as possible. Because it can happen, right? It can happen.
Understood. I'm going back here. Sorry, there's some. Can you talk a bit more about why you think private property is a waste of money versus HDB?
I didn't say private property is a waste of money. Okay, it's not a good use of money.
Not good. Sorry. Yes.
Not good use of money, and for two reasons. Number one is that first of all, private property as a place of stay versus HDB. They have probably more facilities. It looks more grand. There's a halo effect, or in English or in Hokkien we say hao lian effect. But the frank truth is that you pay a lot of money for it, right? The per square feet right now is in 1,000 plus 2,000. It's just ridiculous. Someone was telling me that my backside is not so expensive that I have to sit on the per square foot of $1,000 apartment. And in fact, most of the private property right now are very small, right? So the quality of life reduces a lot. But in terms of value for money, HDB gives you the best value for money. In fact, if you could buy your BTO flat, is even a higher value for money, and the returns, appreciation they get from a BTO flat is tremendous. So from a value point of view, value for money point of view, I still favor a HDB flat. Okay. Now, however, from a investment point of view, the appreciation of HDB flat is not so high anymore, apart from your first BTO flat. And in private property as well, the appreciation is also sucky right now. It's very bad right now. So So from that perspective, you know, if both sucks, I myself pay less for it and use the excess in places where it don't sucks and it gives me a lot of return. So HDB enables me to do that. We really need to take away this. We really need to take away this concept that people who stay in HDB are of a lower status and people who stay in private property are higher status in life. This concept has ruined financially many people. In fact, I stay in the HDB. I think in recent years, my car parks are full of big limousines, and I think even one Ferrari. You know, is so. I think people are getting wiser and wiser to know that HDB gives them the best value.
Got it. Understand. Do you have a view on Singapore saving bonds?
I don't. I don't buy Singapore saving bonds. I do buy US bonds. In fact, I bought a lot of it. It's just comfort and familiarity. If I want an asset that negatively correlate with that of my US index, so I buy US bonds.
Understood. Understood. And I think there was a question about insurance. Do you advise sort of using putting money into insurance policies with an investment component?
I'm going to say something that's very controversial. It's my opinion, okay, that insurance company are shitty with investments because they investment returns, because by virtue that they are generally very risk averse company, they won't dare take the right risk. So the returns that you get from your insurance are usually very bad. Second is that to make matter worse are those whole life policies and those insurance linked policies. Sorry, investment linked policies, ILPs. Whole life policy, ILPs, they are really bad policies in terms of returns. I think the concept of, to many Singaporeans, the concept that, you know, I pay a sum of money and I won't get anything in return, you know, it's bad. But however, in exchange for doing that, they end up buying insurance policy like whole life policies where they pay a lot, get covered very little. A lot of money are being sucked up by the insurance company, insurance agents. If you notice, many of insurance agents come with big cars and big houses. Who do you think pay for them? You know, who do you think pay for them, right? You think that the companies pay for them? They get it from the products they sell, and that's from you. That's because the returns from those policies are very high. So therefore, I encourage everybody to look at term insurance, where I think it's even possible to get $10-20 to cover for $100,000 or something like that. You know, what is $10-20 nowadays? You know, it's 1 or 2 plates of chicken rice nowadays. You know, and I think that's the best way to cover yourself, to my opinion.
Understood. Understood. I think I'm looking at the time. It's already 8 o'clock. We have a few sort of more specific technical questions, but perhaps you know, I can close off with one more question. I mean, do you mind talking a bit about using your SRS or CPF or whatever else to invest in the STI ETF in particular? You know, obviously that's a home-based index. So, do you have any thoughts about that?
I have 2 articles on it. Can you please, for everybody, please Google Loo Cheng Chuan, which is my name, Loo Cheng Chuan, and type STI. I got 2 articles on it. One just written last week, I think, or a week plus ago, and one is written about a year ago. That basically says that the STI is called the Straits Times Index. I call it the super terrible index. It is one of the worst index you can invest your money in. The return sucks, and the diversity is bad. So, and you were to compare that with if you compare that with S&P 500, I give you an example. In 2007, the STI was at a high of 3,800 points, and since that day till now, it has never recovered to that point. 3,800 points, never recovered to that point. You know, the S&P 500 in 2007, if you are so swayed just to buy the index before the crash of the Lehman Brothers crash, you know, today, let's say you buy at a high, today you'll be sitting at some 80-something% capital appreciation, despite the COVID-19 crash. So, and the reason is the S&P 500 is only a collection of very mostly Singapore companies. Top 30 of them, all of them are mature, boring, and unattractive in their returns anymore. So I'm very against STI index, and unfortunately, I have to confess that I learned that after 15 years of investing in STI index to know that they're bad.
Understood. So it's almost 8 o'clock. Again, on the screen is t.me/Loo1m65. There've been a few technical questions that have popped up about insurance, about CPF contributions and all that. Sorry, I will just answer one. Someone published an ILP return with an annualized return of 19.56%. It's definitely possible in a single year, but I guarantee you long-term will never be anything close to that. What Mr. Loo said earlier about fees when it comes to insurance investment products, they are incredibly high, and they eat into your returns. Sorry, Mr. Loo, I just needed to do that public service announcement. So please don't do anything other than sort of critical illness and sort of life insurance and stuff like that. So, but again, Mr. Loo's chat group is great. It's actually a community of a few thousand people, and there's some finance and investment and insurance pros in there as well, who are very generous with their free advice and very honest advice. And Mr. Loo is always on there chipping in as well. So you just should definitely check out his Telegram channel and feel free to ask your more specific technical questions there. There'll definitely be the pros in there to help you out as well. But shall we call it a night, Mr. Loo, and let everyone get to dinner? 371 people have been kind enough to stay with us.
for listening in. I'm happy to answer more questions in the Telegram group, and feel free to ask me to any more questions there. And I wish everybody a good 1M to 4M65 retirement, and stay safe, stay sound, and we're looking forward to circuit breaker lifting. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Loo. Have a good long weekend.